Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Hi, welcome to Access to Democracy. I am your host, Roxanne Meshar, and my guest today is Claudine Arndt, who runs Wellness with Claudine, all about health, digestive health, wellness, and nutrition. So she's going to share a little bit about her work today. Claudine, welcome to Access to Democracy. So nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. So, tell the viewers a little bit about your background, how you came to be in this kind of work.
Okay, so it's sort of a convoluted story. I think like so many people that end up going into a career that's basis is a passion of theirs. You know, the foundation really lies in a lot of my own history in taking care of my own health. But I'll try to be succinct as I tell this story. I was a sick kid. You know, I was the kid that always had ear infections. My mom was always shuttling me back and forth to the doctor's office. As a teenager, I suffered from a lot of sinus infections, and so I was on a lot of antibiotics. And I ended up with something called antibiotic overload.
Which many viewers have probably heard of, so people get resistant ultimately to antibiotics.
Yep, you got it, exactly. People become resistant and they end up having other side effects as well, like digestive distress, which ended up happening for me. So I ended up having different health challenges sort of layered upon one another. So it wasn't until I was a teenager that a family friend kind of intervened in her own way, and she said, maybe you should see a holistic practitioner, you know, a holistic practitioner who might be able to help you get to the root of some of these health concerns. So it sounds silly to say it now, but it was a revolutionary concept that there might be something that my family and I could do to address these health concerns. Because up until that point, we'd just been told that I had a weak immune system. So I went ahead and I saw this holistic chiropractor who also had a really strong knowledge base in nutrition. And I followed her nutritional guidance to a T. You know, I was motivated. I wanted to feel better. And I love telling people that when I changed my food, I changed my life.
Wow. So say more about that. What does that mean? You changed your food and you changed your life. How did it work?
Yeah, well, you know, she gave me some really sound nutritional guidance. Like, you know, Claudine, maybe you want to start getting more whole foods into your diet. I had grown up in kind of a processed food household, or she identified even way back then that I was really deficient in some essential fatty acids. So she helped me understand how I could get more of those into my diet. Or, you know what, you're eating a lot of sugar. You know, maybe you want to back away from the sugar.
And more, they say sugar is like poison, especially for autoimmune issues, that it's causing rheumatoid arthritis, or at least it's aggravating it, or it's many of the diseases now that are falling into that camp. Sugar just makes it worse, straight sugar. So,
Oh, you got it. It is a drug.
Yeah,
It is undoubtedly a drug, and we have no idea how much sugar we're typically eating because it's insidious.
Yes.
You know, it's just in all sorts of different
You have
places.
to watch every label, and even then it doesn't say sugar always. It's interesting. Sometimes I notice it'll say fructose, or it says, you know, they have added sugar, but they've called it, you know, it's corn syrup, but they've called it something else, or it's corn syrup, which is in fact sugar, you know, so that's very interesting.
Oh, tons of names for it. I think there's something like 50 different names for sugar.
For sugar,
Because the food industry has caught on that we know sugar's not the best thing for us, so they try to hide it from us.
Yeah, it's true.
So anyway, yeah, I went about following her guidance, and you know, it didn't happen overnight, but it's amazing how quickly my health concerns unraveled, given how long I had been feeling unwell. And so that's what sparked my interest in nutrition. And from there, here I am, this nerdy teenager whose hobby is like reading about nutrition from that point forward. And it wasn't until about 15 years later that I figured out, you know what, this isn't going to go away. I want to figure out how I can make a career out of it. And ended up finding the school that I attended called the Institute for Integrative Nutrition.
Nice. Well, why not make your profession part of that which is making you feel wonderful in your life? Why not do that? You know, that's pretty integrative in and of itself. So if nutrition is what's making you feel terrific, why not incorporate that as part of your life's work? Why not do that? So very nice. So, so integrative nutrition coach, I think is what you do, or would be close. Would that be correct? So if someone came to see you, like what do you do? How do you do it? What would happen if they came to visit you at your office?
Yeah, so great question. You know, I call myself an integrative nutrition coach. Some other people might say health coach or wellness coach. It really is all kind of one in the same. But basically, it's sort of self-explanatory. You know, my role is to help people achieve the goals that they have for their health, or unravel health concerns that they're dealing with. And I do that through small tweaks, or I like to use the word upgrades, to their diet and lifestyle. Yeah.
So what would be a typical upgrade? For example, I'm suffering from, let's say I have sinus issues. So what might be an upgrade suggestion from you?
Yeah, so I like to use a theory called the crowding out theory, which goes along with upgrading. So sinus issues are notoriously linked to sugar consumption and dairy consumption, two things that can be really congesting to our body. So in this case, I might ask people to make an upgrade from dairy products to like coconut products. You know, if you typically do dairy milk, maybe try coconut milk instead. You know, and then also the crowding out theory could, you know, involve, we can only eat so much in any given day. And so asking people to try to crowd out the things that might be making them sick by incorporating more health promoting foods into their diets.
Now that's also interesting because we have noticed in our household over time that if we say, well, we aren't going to we're going to try and not eat X, that's kind of negative, and we don't want to give up what's really delicious about maybe a big giant steak on the grill. But if we reframe it and we say, well, we're going to try to incorporate more greens or greens and grains, that's a little different because, as you say, you can only eat so much food. So if you've had now a bowl with some grains and greens in a fun taco sauce or whatever, your ability to eat a giant piece of steak now is somewhat limited, but you might be able to have 2 or 3 little slices on there maybe, but otherwise you've filled up in something equally tasty and good, and you haven't really eliminated maybe the meat, but now it's maybe a flavoring, so it's not the main event on my plate, for example. Kind of interesting how that works.
You totally have that concept. Yeah, it's a whole different state of mind, really, rather than that kind of willpower, relying on willpower or a deprivation mindset. You know, going, I'm going to add these things in first.
So I'm going to add things in. I like that. That's just more fun.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun. Yeah. So may I say some other things about health coaching?
Please.
So I feel personally, obviously I'm biased, right? But I feel like we're filling in some major gaps in our current healthcare model. All right, like the attitude of health coaches is all about prevention. So even when someone might come to me, well, let me say this first. A health coach would never diagnose anybody with anything. It's certainly not our role. But somebody might come to me and say, you know what, Claudine, I've just had this diagnosis of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Is there anything I can do to address that? Or somebody else might come to me and say, you know, I've struggled with my weight for 10, 20 years. I've tried the formula of, you know, fewer calories and moving my body more, and the pounds still won't budge.
It's not working for me, yeah.
Yeah, do you have any other ideas of what might be going on? So my work is really, you know, customized and geared toward that person in front of me in any given moment. But that being said, our attitude is always of prevention. You know, even when someone's coming to me with a health concern, we're still trying to put things in place that will prevent that health concern from maybe escalating and hopefully unraveling it. You know, statistics say that the average doctor's visit is 8 minutes long.
Wow, that's pretty short. Doesn't leave a lot of time for nutrition advice or asking about what they're eating or how it's affecting them. And quite frankly, medical schools, by and large, don't provide training in that area, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, and I know quite a few physicians, and every single one of them would love to spend more time with their patients. So it's not a criticism at all, it's just our model currently, you know, and like you were saying, in those 8 minutes, you can get a quick idea of what might be going on with someone, but it doesn't give you the opportunity to get down at the root of what's going on.
So it's different than when they come to visit you. So it isn't an 8-minute visit. To kind of walk us through what would happen if I would come to your office. How would that work?
Yeah, yeah. So I spend 60 minutes per session with a client, and usually it's every other week that someone will come and sit with me, and we are having like in-depth conversations. You know, I like to think of it as us working side by side with one another, you know, where I'm learning as much as I can about that person so that I can create, you know, a unique diet and lifestyle plan for them. So I do this by asking a lot of questions. So it's kind of funny that today we're sitting here and I'm so chatty because usually I'm the one in your role and I'm the one asking the high mileage questions. You know,
and you're listening then to all the responses that comes out. Interesting. I have a couple of friends who are who are psychologists, so they work in that realm, and one works with students. And she said one of the first things she spends on visits with the student is, let's not talk about the psychological issues. I just want to find out what they're eating, how they're sleeping, and how they're exercising. And we address all of those things first, and then we come back in a couple weeks and start looking at the psychological issues, which all of those things are linked. So oftentimes, doing something with nutrition and changing the kinds of foods that are eaten has a huge impact. Not just physically, even if there's no issues there, but psychologically. Maybe you can share a little more about.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's just, I don't even really know where to begin with that, but you're right. I mean, the fuel that we're putting into our bodies becomes not only our physical self. You know, we're always recreating ourselves with the food that we're eating, but it also becomes our mental self and our emotional self as well, and how we react to, you know, life, the stressors that come at us, how we interact with other people. So I'll often say to people, you know, garbage in, garbage out.
Yes. I noticed you brought some beautiful kale today. And this is the kind of thing that goes such a long way to helping not just our skin and our physical bodies, but our, you know, our endocrine system, our psychological health, our brain, how it functions. But look at all this beautiful kale, and it's farmers market time now, so you can find this at the farmers market. And it's interesting that you talk about adding to your diet. It's sometimes fun to think about different things that we like as a vegetable delivery system. So sometimes I think about fried rice, for example, and rather than a lot of fried rice with a few little dots of vegetables, it's more fun to think of the rice as a veggie delivery system. So that it's a little bit of rice, and how many pieces of kale can I stuff in there? Or pasta, same thing, you know, take some linguine instead of mainly linguine with a little bit of parsley. How many other vegetables can I cram into this so we're getting a little bit of linguine? Feeds the brain. You think you're eating pasta, but really it's 4 pieces of kale, and it's got
Yeah.
mushrooms in there, and there's onions in there, and there's garlic, and there's peppers, and there's all kinds of other things. So adding in, that whole idea. It's fun.
Roxanne, can I use that in the
Sure.
vegetable delivery system? I
yes.
love that. Because one of the things I love talking to my clients about is just think of the foods you already eat, the dishes you're already preparing now. But now think, how can you add more vegetables to
Yes.
those?
Yes.
Especially leafy greens. So I did intentionally bring the leafy greens like Swiss chard and kale. There's cilantro in there, which is another just medicinal food. But I brought those intentionally because those are foods that we're hearing about more and more now, but they're still mysterious to people, and they often don't know how to incorporate them into their diets, but they're powerhouses.
Yes.
Just powerhouses. So
Kale is easy too. You just slice it up into strips, maybe saute it with some onions, and put it in the pasta. I
Yeah.
even see you have some asparagus in there,
Yeah.
same thing. Yeah. So you just saute all that and then combine it with your pasta, and now it's double the volume. Throw some maybe butter beans in there, and now when you start serving that up, you're getting very little pasta. You're getting some butter beans. You're getting all of these
Yes.
green leafy, but you're getting other things.
You're a
So-
pro.
So it is fun to do, and it's more
It
colorful.
is.
And it's healthy.
it's really fun, and it's one way that people can just start off slowly. You know,
Yes.
sometimes people think, oh, I have to have this whole side dish of kale.
No.
And you don't. No, just think of what
Add
you're
it in.
already preparing
Add
and
it
figure
in.
out how to create your own vegetable delivery system.
Yes, exactly. Use rice, use pasta, use whatever works.
Right.
So I noticed that when we talked a little earlier, you focus on the area of women's health and digestive wellness.
Yes.
So I'm guessing you want to say a little bit more about that, because that's kind of the area you hone in on, or the area
Yeah.
you specialize in, I guess I want to say.
Right, yeah. Oh, I'm so passionate about digestive wellness, which always throws people for a little bit of loop when you actually say that out loud. But of course, in part, that's due to, my own history somewhat.
Yes.
But beyond that, I mean, when you start learning about the digestive system, the digestive tract, it is so fascinating, and it's so foundational to our overall wellness. So over the 10 years that I've been health coaching, I mean, it's just amazing how so often digestive wellness is the path to my clients getting well. And so I always love to spout off this quote. And most people have heard of Hippocrates,
Yes.
who's sometimes referred to as the founder of medicine. He was a
Yes.
Greek physician, and I mean, he passed away like 370 BC or something like
Yes.
that. But even then, he went on record as saying all diseases begin in the gut. And I
Pretty
feel
powerful saying when you think about it. Yeah.
it's so powerful.
Yeah.
I feel like just now we're sitting on the edge of a cliff and just starting to understand how true that statement was.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm sure viewers will want to know, and I'm sure you get asked these kinds of questions all the time. So what about the paleo diet? What about the Atkins diet? What about all the carb-free diet, the carb-loaded diet? What about the veggies only? What about vegan? What about, it just goes on and on and on. So recommendations, what do you think about all those diets that are out there that people latch onto? Wheat-free,
Yeah.
wheat belly, there's another one.
Oh yeah, that's a doozy of a question. And that's a question I get a lot. There's so much confusion around nutrition. So when I went to school, I remember being stunned when I learned that nutrition is the only science where two directly opposing theories can both be proven correct. Isn't that funny?
It is funny. Yeah.
And no wonder we're so confused, though,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So I can't say that I recommend any one diet over another. Some people really thrive on being vegan or vegetarian, or thrive that way for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and then find that their body's really craving animal protein, meat again. Some people really thrive on the paleo, which is characterized by animal protein, low glycemic vegetables and fruits. But then other people might find that there's not enough carbohydrates in that diet, and they have really low energy as a result. So that's what a health coach does. I mean, this is a great question because I help people experiment, and find out which foods end up being the power foods for their body. And when people are feeling awesome because they're really nourishing themselves the way their body wants to be nourished, they stop going for the junk.
It's true. Viewers may even have had an experience with eating something that is really good for them. And instead of after the meal wanting to go take a nap or just feeling lethargic, you just feel like zing, you know, like somebody just gave you energy. So that's the difference of being able to feel light and energetic versus really, you know, the after Thanksgiving dinner syndrome of I just need to go take a nap and it's too much. So the idea is to go for the zing, what makes you hum, makes you feel good.
Go for the zing.
Yeah. So, but for women it's tricky because women have childbearing years, women have very different endocrine system, so all of those things mean that even from week to week, what worked last week may or may not work next week. So how do you help patients or clients navigate those waters?
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. I mean, what we thrive on when we're 20 years old could be so different from when we're 40 versus when we're 60. And so, you know, one of my principles is just whatever you're going to eat the highest quality version of that food possible. So whether it's salmon, choose wild caught over farmed, you know, broccoli, organic over conventional, down to the coffee you use in your creamer and your coffee itself, because there are thousands of chemicals that are in our environment and food supply now. So that's one of my principles, and then to just really learn how to listen to your body, you know, and give yourself permission to experiment, not be attached to any one way of eating. You know, really knowing that we're always changing, we're always recreating ourselves. I mean, my goodness, like you're saying, if we have a hard workout one day, then the next day we might need something different from 3 days later.
That's really wise advice, I think, to just have the freedom and the authority to say, maybe I am the best judge of how I feel after I eat this versus something else. I think of early on in my work years, in my 20s, often in an office environment, people bring in donuts, and then of course there's coffee there. I think I learned very early on I could not eat that donut and drink that coffee without feeling just awful an hour after. In fact, I felt so bad. As much as the donut was great, and as much as I was young and would burn it off in terms of calories, it just made me feel really, really bad. So I gave up on that because, you know, it doesn't matter, and I'm sure it was homemade and whatever, it could have been really excellent, but the fact is the glycemic load in the crash for me was just way too much, so I walked away from that. And that's true for other people and other items, so other food items, but to just be able to, you're right, to be able to listen and take note afterwards. Gee, I ate X and now I feel good, moderate, no change, or worse. You know, how do I feel?
Yeah. You know, food is meant to energize us. So if we're eating something and then an hour or two later, you know, our energy is in what I call the pit of despair, you know, or we have a headache or we're about to fall asleep at our desk, you know, that was not the right choice for us.
Oh, so even to keep a little notepad or a little on your phone, a little memo pad of, here's how I feel at 2 o'clock after I ate lunch, this at noon, or whatever it might be, could be very useful.
Yeah, I find most often people really benefit from writing it down. We always think we're going to remember. We never remember.
Now, you have a little saying that, which isn't even a saying, but it's a truth, that health coaches can provide small changes with big results. So these are the kinds of things I'm imagining that are so useful. Maybe you can share a little more.
Well, for instance, I mean, like your coffee donut experiment, you know, I would say most people react really similarly to you. You know, so one of my small changes or small upgrades I love for people to play around with is breakfast. You know, are you eating within an hour of waking up in the morning, and are you eating enough for breakfast? You know, most of us have had a 12-hour fast. By that time when we actually go to have our breakfast, and our body and our brain needs fuel. And we're setting our metabolic tone for the day with breakfast. So play with breakfast. If you're a coffee drinker, I'm not going to take your coffee away, but can you wait until after breakfast to have your cup of coffee?
Interesting.
Right? And then it's not so hard on your adrenal glands, an area I'm really passionate about with women's health. You know, our little hardworking stress management glands, they get triggered by coffee consumption on an empty belly.
Interesting.
You know, so just little things like that.
Or even try things that are for lunch or dinner for breakfast, and breakfast things for lunch or dinner. That's always kind of interesting to see how that works, because sometimes the leftovers from the night before are a better energy choice
Right.
than a sugary or a high carb, depending on the person, I guess. But
Right. And can I go back to something about health coaching
Sure.
too?
Sure.
So as I said, I call myself an integrative nutrition coach. So integrative, is pretty synonymous with holistic. I may have said that, but it means really caring for the whole person. So recognizing that there are many contributing factors to building one's health, and those are interconnected, and we need to consider all of them. So yes, I love talking about food. That is so my passion. I love getting into nutrition with food, or nutrition with my clients. But we also need to look at things like, how are your sleep habits? Or physical
Exercise.
activity. Are you moving your body at all during the day, or getting like 900 steps a day?
And for all of us who work in an office, likely not, likely not. We have a few minutes left, and our viewers might be interested to know that you are also part of Minnesota Cooks, so maybe you can explain a little more about that.
Yeah, so Minnesota Cooks is also a program that's pretty near and dear to my heart. This is the 13th year for Minnesota Cooks, and Minnesota Cooks is an educational outreach program of Minnesota Farmers Union.
And it's at the state fair, correct? So,
yeah, there are two components. So one component is the Minnesota Cooks calendar that we publish every year, and this contains all original photography of the 12 farmers with sustainable practices and 12 chefs who'd work with local farmers in their restaurants to provide high quality food. And then we also have the one-day event at the Minnesota State Fair that's fun. It's a local food celebration, and this year it's on Sunday, August 30th.
Oh, so they can come and talk to you live and in person at the booth at the State Fair.
Yeah.
Where are you located in the State Fair? Do you know yet?
Yeah, so our event is always on the big outdoor stage in Carousel Park, which is just south of the grandstand. And Roxanne, I literally rent a kitchen that gets delivered onto the stage.
Wow.
And so it's part cooking demonstration, food samples.
Oh,
I always like to
fun.
say we have the best food at the State Fair
All
because
right.
it's all high quality.
Excellent.
And then it's part dialogue about our food system as well with the farmers that are paired
fun.
with the chefs.
Yeah, so fun. We just have a minute left or so, and I want to know that you have a chance to give viewers your contact information. So should they want to connect with you or want to make an appointment and learn more about what they can do to feel not just okay, but really feel wonderful, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. I have a website, and it's wellnesswithclaudine.com. And people can email me at claudine@wellnesswithclaudine.com.
Okay.
My phone number is 612-202-7872. And I work in person out of the Aslan Institute in Eagan, kind of an integrative mental health center, and also by phone and Skype.
Nice. And you have an office with a beautiful view
Oh,
and
yeah.
very relaxing to be in.
I love
so I would
my
encourage
space.
anyone, if you want to feel really terrific during the day as opposed to ho-hum or as opposed to just okay, make an appointment and go in and see how tweaking and maybe making some minor changes will have big results for them, for viewers in their life and in their energy levels. So that would be a wonderful thing. I'm so glad you were able to join us on the show today. I hope you can come back again and we can talk more about the kinds of small things we can make. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Goodbye for now.